about something that I think is a really good, because people always think that video games are frivolous, but what you were saying, I think that's really important, is it's so difficult that it requires you to only think about that, and it can like relieve stress.
Yeah.
It can take out the rest of the world because it's so hard.
Yeah.
You can only think about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I play a video game on extreme difficulty, then I have to concentrate fully on the game, and it has a calming effect.
Yeah.
It sort of chills down.
Elon Musk is right about video games. See, who cares about the Trump stuff and Harris or whatever? I don't know. I'm here, guys, for the video game discussion between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. And what I found really interesting is this note here, right? Where Musk explains that he feels like calming his mind, right? We call it tranquility in this video. So I am a Diablo game developer. Of course, I worked on Blizzard then, right? Talk about later in the video. But more importantly, I'm also a behavior scientist. And that can mean a lot of things. But I have worked then with what's called HCI, or human-computer interaction, where you make different stuff, right? You analyze how people behave, the mindset, what they learn, what they don't learn, how they feel, so on, right? From playing games or maybe flying an airplane or whatever. It can be different kind of interaction, of course. And I find this part here really, really interesting, right? Because I've been saying this for many, many years. There is one thing the video game actually gives you is a meditative state. If the game is hard enough. So I think it's really interesting here where the Musk
Like
Yes.
cool,
Yes.
like something that forces you. It's like I think anything that forces you to concentrate fully actually has a calming effect. I find it just sort of like kind of a restoring effect. Mentally.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone, Modern here. Time for another video game video. But today, I want to make it different, right? Because I actually really like this bit here in the beginning. But they're discussing, of course, like I said then, the tranquility of your mind, right? The calmness of playing hard games. Just watch the video here a little bit, right? React a little bit to Elon Musk and Joe Rogan discussing video games, right? This is the first minute of it. But like I said earlier, right? In the intro of the video, I have done, because we're the Blizzard, blah, blah, I'll come to it later. But like I said, the more importantly is that I have a lot of experience with such guys like pattern recognition, like brain, how the brain works, and like think about it in more a neuroscience way, right? And watching this video then earlier this week, I was really like, man, yeah, this is very interesting because I have seen this thing in my own research many years, and both on a video game standpoint, but also on like, how I say it, like a general interactive standpoint with other stuff, right? So I worked both with video game design and stuff, but I also have designed, for example, cockpits, simulation stuff, you know, like when you're flying an airplane or when you're like driving a car or whatever, so to speak. So I see this as well, right? Talking about like immersion, talking about getting into the zone and so on, right? And it's very, very interesting, I feel, how, at least my personal standpoint, ignoring all my own expertise or my own papers or whatever, I've written papers about whatever. On a personal standpoint, I absolutely feel the same thing that Elon Musk is saying. This is a video about it. Me and Musk, same person now. But I think it's very, very, it's a very thing I can relate to. I can really relate massively. So first of all then, I can really relate to what Elon Musk is saying. I can really relate to his emotion. I really feel so because it's exactly what I feel as well, right? So currently, I am high ranked, 76 player, master, top rank, whatever, right? And I'm playing with this kind of archery stick, right? Complicated controls, all right? So obviously, I'm kind of hardcore, my own art design on the stick and everything, right? And every day after work when I get home, I play like a half an hour of this game, right? And it really calms me down, right? Stuff that had put on work, some arguments, fights, whatever, right? All of that disappears, right? Because playing a fighting game on like, the hardest, highest level of, competitive player, right? Facing these like real pro players, right? I have to really, really concentrate so much, right? My brain is only on the video game, right? And by doing that, I can't think about other concerns or my bank or my money or, issues at work or whatever, or my wife, or all that goes away, right? And you only think about the video game. I used to play a lot of Starcraft as well, right? Same thing there. I was top 10 Starcraft 2 player in Europe for a while, and sitting there, I was doing like college, and as soon as I got home, played Starcraft games, right? Everything about school disappeared, all the issues, the girlfriends, whatever, all of that disappeared, focused. When you're playing Starcraft 2, you have to be kind of focused, right? Because the game is so much micromanagement. So even ignoring my own research, right? Ignoring my own work, so on, I can really, really relate to what Musk is saying, because I have felt this my whole life, right? And I remember, for example, that with Starcraft 2 in college, I was playing 2 against 2 for a while with a friend, a classmate. And he's always like, yeah, it's so calming. He was always like, yeah, it's so calm when we are playing, you know, everything goes away, it's only the game, right? And I think it is a similar thing. They bring it up later in the video, but it's just about like martial art, right? I've also been a martial artist many years, my whole life. And same thing there, you have to kind of like empty your head, right, and go into the dojo, only think about the actual martial art, the fight or whatever, right, and you can't think about anything else. But the thing is that's kind of hard, right? I mean, I admit it here, right? I've been training martial art my whole life, but sometimes I get to the dojo, right? For example, then when I was in college, and I can't stop thinking about like, oh, I have a test tomorrow. Oh, I have this thing. I have to study after the training's over. I have to, you know, study for an hour. I have to do this thing. I have to go to bed early. This blah blah, right? But when I play a game like back then Starcraft 2 or now then 76 or whatever, right? No, then I can actually, you know, forget about that. I can actually remove all that feelings, right? So it is a very interesting feeling how the brain, and I think even from like I'll say studying standpoint, when I was in college and so on, right? I studied better there too. I studied better having the music on and this thing and that on. I never been a good person to go to like the library and it's all quiet, and I don't like it. I like it when it's a lot of stimulus around me, right? The more stimulants, and I have to focus on the actual game. Lastly, I played this game right here now called Sega 2. Great game. I'm gonna make a review about it later. It's a really good game actually. One of my favorite games here actually. This game has like old school hardcore mode. It's a remake of Night game, right? And I play this when I commute to work, and genuinely I forget that I am on the commute, on the train. Yeah, this game is so hard because the can't have permanent and so on. So even if it's a single player game, I am so focused on this game, right, that everything around me disappears, and honestly it makes the trip to the office so easily, right? Because like a 40-minute trip suddenly feels like 3 minutes, right? As I play this game, I am so ingrained into playing the game, right? Great game, honestly. If you play it on hardcore mode. If you play it on like normal, it's probably a terrible game because the story is whatever. But now then, let's go to the clip actually, let's more look about it. And of course, they're also gonna bring up stuff like how doctors are better at gaming and so, which also is true, but that's like another video. So let's like react to the actual talk then.
20, and but even the top 100 is like totally dominated by China.
So it's kind of, this is one thing first of all, right? This is because Diablo 4.
Are you in the top 20 in the world? Or top 20 in the
Yeah, this is like in the world right there.
Diablo.
So first of all, this is an interesting side note here. This is because you know, China plays a lot of these mobile games. Diablo 4 isn't a mobile game, but it became quite popular with, of course, Diablo Immortal, and then you can kind of buy gear in the Immortal World. So they kind of brought a lot of these things. And of course, also otherwise, South Korea has big and Blizzard games, obviously Starcraft and Diablo and so on. So most of the other people, of course, in the higher ranks are basically all in China or Korea, right, or South Korea. I think of this part, right? I think it's very interesting.
I think that's really important.
I've been saying it for so many years, right?
That it requires you to only think about
Yeah,
that, and
so-
it can like relieve stress.
Yeah, relieve stress.
Yeah. It can take out the rest of the world.
This is what I meant earlier, right? And I obviously it's the second time we script now, but yeah, I really mean it. I think it's very interesting because you absolutely can remove your stress if playing a hard game, and I think it's interesting too because personally, I've always been, you know, gameplay before everything, right? Graphic has no meaning to me. It's all about game mechanics. Again, this game here, Mistake 2, is a kind of like an ugly Switch game, honestly, right? But it's a great gameplay mechanics. I think it's one of the best games this year. I think it's much better than games that looks much better, right, from a graphic standpoint. But the gameplay is much better. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I am so focused on, again, gameplay mechanics. In all the games I worked on, right, I've usually been like, you know, game designer, combat designer, lead combat designer, creative director. But you know what I mean? I was went from like the combat design standpoint, the gameplay standpoint, right? And I don't understand people that are, you know, they play game for graphics, right? That means to me. Even storyline, I would say, isn't that important. Except, of course, if you're playing games like a visual novel, a game like Heavy Rain, so on, those games. And I like Heavy Rain. I mean, but there's like a narrative in games, right, you know. But otherwise, it always should be gameplay focused, right? Think like Elden Ring, right? There's a storyline there, I suppose, but the storyline is kind of like whatever, right? You're playing it because it's hard battles, right? And I'm also, as a side note here, this could be another video, But I also think that this is also one of the failures of the West, right? We've seen games like Vilgard sort of coming out, where I was hating it. I made a video about it earlier this week, and we all were laughing at it, right? With the dialogue. But the game is also kind of brain dead, right? I mean, the game is kind of easy. Isn't the easiest game ever, but it is too easy, I would say. I think another fault of the West is also making most of their modern games also just be pretty boring. Because, the Japanese, like this game here then again, right? The Japanese, they keep making like hardcore games, right? That actually are like literally like permanent and so on. And I think that's something we also are missing more and more from the West, right? They're making the game too easy as well. But because if it's easy, obviously this would happen. The discussion talking about.
Because it's so hard.
Yeah.
You can only think.
It has to be hard, right? Yeah. So I mean.
I find like if I play a video game on extreme difficulty, then
yeah, like what was the point then?
On the game, and it has a calming effect.
Yeah.
So it has to either be like multiplayer, right? Or like I said, it have to be like the hardest difficulty in the game, right?
Yes.
Like something that
And I only also in my whole life I've only played video games on the hardest difficulty always. Yeah. I would never play a game on easy. Like, are you stupid? Never.
Sort of like kind of a restoring effect.
Yeah.
It's good.
Jiu-jitsu is like that.
Yeah.
Archery's like that as well.
Yeah.
Like
So,
when you're
this
shooting
point
a
there.
bow,
That's a pretty interesting point too, right? Because archery, I don't Kyoto, of course, because I'm a weeb, but I haven't done archery. But it's a good point because archery is very, very hard, and Kyoto and Japanese archery, and you have to be so focused on your mind, right? And I guess generally marksmanship sports, any kind of shooting thing is very, very, mind focused rather than. Sure, you need some dexterity, you need a general technical skills, right? But certainly, like you're saying here, especially with like generally marksmanship sports, you have to be very, very keen, on like controlling your brain. You have to be incredibly calm and so on. So if you're gonna be a good archer, you have to be able to calm yourself down and so on, right? So definitely going to the archery range also makes you kind of like you're either gonna miss the target, right, or you're gonna be able to calm down and then be able to kind of, and in that way it's also very meditating. So I think it is the point as well that these like very precision sports. You have to be very, very controlled. Right? I'm actually friends with one of the best marksmen in Sweden. Women league, she's actually one of the best marksmen, and she's extremely like calm, military career, extremely mind-focused person, right? And obviously same thing you have to be. It's more about being able to completely control your mindset, right, than anything else, right?
I was reading a study about surgeons.
Now this is interesting as well. This part as well.
Surgeons who regularly play video games make less errors. Well,
video games require manual dexterity, so
yeah.
It makes sense.
Completely makes sense.
Actually, if somebody was like epic at video games, I'd say like the surgical skills can be very.
I'm
good.
gonna try to get a job now at SpaceX. After watching this, I'm like, should you hire me? And I'm good at this, Dave.
Fewer errors. 20.
So like I said earlier, right, I have my own separate stick here behind me, right, and as you can see, right, this is a leverless controller. I will leave a link below because I made a video how to play on this thing. But basically, right, this is quite hard to play with. Like honestly, I must say to brag on anything. I'm just saying I bought it myself this year, and my video was about having to master to play with this thing, right, and also get to Master League in Street Fighter. It was like a two-pronged issue, right? Like, how do I improve in this game with this new character, but also how do I actually learn to play with this weird tool, right? This is not very intuitive to that sense, right? So I think what he's saying here, very different the topic video here, but it's very, very true as well, I think, right? Because like your Rogan is saying here, you improve your medical skills, like your surgical skills, if you play a lot of video games. Like, of course you are, right? If you play this kind of games, obviously. Like I'm very high dexterity or whatever, but obviously if you play this thing right, you have to control your fingers, your hands, the motion skills, and be able to predict something to happen, react immediately, and if you play fighting especially, you have to do different inputs to do different abilities, right? So you have to do like double quarter circle, this thing and so on. So different kind of patterns or this kind of thing, right? You have different kind of like. It's basically, I compare to playing the piano, right? You have basically kind of different combinations of this, and then this thing happens, right? And you have to do it immediately, in like one reaction second, right? At least that, and milliseconds. So it always takes a lot of like, dexterity for your fingers and your hands, like eye-face coordination, and also then a mental stack, right? So I think it's obvious that if you're good at like fighting games, you automatically would have at least, not like the medical skill, right, to perform a surgery, but you probably will have a much better, so to speak, dexterity skill, like the actual like finger skills of doing that. And as a side note or whatever comparison, like I said earlier, I've done a lot most of my life, and I'm very good when it comes to like the nunchucks or juggling the fingers or whatever. Yeah, everything is very like finger dexterity. I'm very good at, like, you know, like having a knife and like throwing it with my fingers, or having a coin and moving past the thing, or all that stuff. I find very, very easy. Like a whole life of martial art plus playing kind of video games, very good with my fingers, right? Yeah.
Well, like that, you should be required in medical school.
Interesting point, though. Everyone should have to do it, yeah.
If somebody's like a top ranked video game player and they say they're a surgeon, I'd be like plus one.
See, I should hire that.
Top rank for sure, but this isn't even top rank.
This here last bit I think is very interesting, and will be a last reaction here. I find it very interesting how Rogan now brings up that these guys aren't even top ranked, right? They aren't even like Master League or whatever. They don't like, you know, Shadow League, whatever you call it, Grandmaster or whatever your game has, right? And that's something very interesting as well, because obviously just playing games might make you slightly better, but there is absolutely a massive difference, though, as you're going to saying, right? From being like, let's say, Bronze League of Legends player and Grandmaster, right? These are like night and day, right? Yeah. You might get some skills anyway if you're Bronze League, but it obviously takes a lot of effort and skill to become good at a video game, right? It's very competitive and blah, blah, so, but also use generally like the mechanical standpoint, right? So if you, again, use Street Fighter, because it's a very easy to explain, right? In Street Fighter, not only do you need to understand like different, like, oh, I'm playing Ryu, he's playing Ken, this is where I'm strong, he's weak in this area, blah, 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 like learning different ranges and so on. There's all like a mental stack you have to know, right? But in order all that stuff, to get to like high level in that kind of game, you have to at least also kind of master the input, right? Coming back to what I mentioned earlier video, interaction design, right? You know, human with interaction. Because you have all the different combos in fighting games, and like earlier it's playing the piano, you have to understand playing this. Then you do the full combo, right? You have to also master that. And that sounds kind of like basic, and it is. Honestly, I don't find it the hardest part to play fighting games, but my point is that, objectively speaking here, right, if you're gonna be really good at a video game, you have to kind of also master that interactive bit, right? Do it precisely and do it quick enough, right? Again, I don't think it's the hardest bit to get higher in these games, but it's a bit you have to also be able to achieve, right? So what you're saying here is that, well, yeah, but these people aren't even like master top rank players, right? You know, but the point is that top rank players, we know for a fact that they have also like mastered the actual like interactive input, right, or whatever the game requires. You can make like Starcraft again, or Alert, or whatever. When I conquer these games, you have to master how to use the mouse and this clicking and all that stuff. You have to master that stuff, right? You know, whatever, right? If you're playing a game like Call of Duty or of course Counter-Strike, whatever, you have to master how to aim quickly and this thing and so on, right? You know, Fortnite, so you have to aim how to quickly, blah blah. So there's a one skills that are mental stacked, right? Cognitive intelligence, but there's some other skills that are very mechanic, right? So I think that's also interesting. I find it, hoping it's like the video describes about it, but I find it interesting, very interesting that he's very right on the part that to get to a high level in any of these games, you have to also acquire a basic set of mechanical skills, right? Or undeniably, you have to reach a certain level of mechanical skills, and then you also have to have the intelligent, the strategy, and so forth, right? And like I said earlier, but my point is that I think it's much easier, though, to actually learn the mechanical skills than to actually learn the strategy and the intellectual skills, right? For example, side note here, but I had a co-worker for a couple of years at a game company then. So obviously you're at a game company, a lot of people are, you know, gamers, right? Surprise. And this guy's one of the best fighting game players in the country. Very, very good player. However, not the best, right? And his issue was actually that thing. We used to play a lot of Dragon Ball Fighters then, because it was kind of new when I worked there. And he was, in a mechanical standpoint, a better player than me. He would always do the perfect combo, like 40 hits combos. He would do extremely perfect, like absurdly long, you know, strings of inputs. So he's a lead programmer, so he's that kind of guy, as you would guess if you know programmers. But he would lose to me, right? Because even if I was a worse player because of actual like input, right, I'm a much better at actually knowing when to pressure, when to know he's like mentally weak or whatever, right, and so on. So I would beat him by actually being a better strategist, right? But my combos would actually be slightly worse. But I was higher ranked than him too as well on the ladder though. I was of course very high ranked in the game as well. He was slightly lower than me, and he hated that. Right? Because we used to play like an hour per day at work during lunch break, and he would always be angry at how can you defeat me, even though he would be angry, being, oh why you combos like the actual mechanical inputs right that I am doing. He's like they're objectively worse than mine, yet I am losing. And he would be very angry. And every time I said to him, well, yeah, because I land my combos more than you do from a very practical standpoint, right? He would do better stuff than I would do, right? When he hit me. But I would hit him more, right? Because I'm better at the strategy. I'm better at actually knowing when I can, punish or whatever, right? So he would be, he would be losing that part, right? But he would never accept that. He would be so angry that he would lose because he was like, well, I am objectively better than you. It's like, no, you're better at one part of the game. You're better at the mechanic part of the game, but you're much worse at the strategy level of the game, right? Which honestly is more important. But that's kind of what I mean here, right? As Rogan is saying, if you're gonna get higher up and master a game, you have to be good at both those things, right? You have to be good at both the mechanical level of it, which then would mean you probably would be a better surgeon, right? Because your fingers, your hands, your whatever, and so on, is good. But then the other part, the meta part, that's more necessary. Yeah, I think the meta part, what I'm saying that I am better than my colleague then, that part probably actually won't happen that much, right? Actually being a surgeon or whatever, because there's like knowing the game matchup, right? Knowing when the opponent is cooldown is whatever. Yeah, like knowing that stuff isn't actually as important because it's very like oriented per game, right?
Just people who play.
Well, your manual dexterity has to be extremely high.
Yes.
So you're looking at things on screen, you're reacting.
Yeah, so you have to be mechanically good, right?
React.
Yes.
And then also, of course, be
incredible reaction times in manual dexterity. They're obviously going to be a good surgeon.
Imagine if there was a course that you could take. That course would.
Now, the last thing I want to bring up here that I was interested to is that when I was a kid, and even when I was in like grad school or so on, about those years, it's like I'm an old man, 15 years ago, but I always disliked how to say it, people were still saying back in those days that what you gained from video games was mostly like collaborative skills. World of Warcraft was the one people used saying, oh, these kids to learn to, to collaborate and team up and so on, right? I always hated that because while that's also part of it, it never made sense to me, right? What you actually probably learn the most playing video games from an actual skill level is what you actually do from a mechanical level, like your body into the game. Ergo, for example, if you World of Warcraft, what you actually rather improve, I would say, mostly, is your mathematical skills, right? If you're actually playing WoW on a higher level, and you do your own builds and this stuff and so on, right? You actually probably learn math more than anything. I remember being in college, and I had to learn Poisson distribution, which is a pretty simple, actually, mathematical formula, but still, I have learned, I learned it before I went to college, because I was playing Shaman Healer for a while, and they had this weird like water ball energy consumption ratio with critical hit or something, blah blah blah. And there was this distribution factor who calculated. So to be able to measure my gear, right? If my gear should be crit based or like MP5 based, I could use this distribution mathematical formula to calculate that, right? So I learned how to do that math, and then I went to college, and then we have that in college. Oh, I know this stuff, right? So if anything, in my experience at least, a lot of the math stuff I learned from that stuff, right? I learned how to write Lua scripts, playing World of Warcraft, learn to code, FF12, learn how to write basic algorithms for your AI, right? Stuff like that. You can see in the latest FF7 Part 2 game, you have this boss fight. It's basically very basic AI coding, right? So I think it's very strange to me, at least, from his Jens here, how people really have diminished what you actually gain from video games, right? Not just talking about the keen skills, the dexterity, and so on, but also just the mental thing, right? Usually, I think it's pretty obvious if you play a lot of video games, certain genres at least, you will improve your IQ, probably, honestly, right? But generally speaking here, you will improve those mathematical skills, right? Number, thinking, and obviously strategy, right? And do a lot of tactical skills, right? You play a lot of Starcraft, you're obviously better at strategy, like straight up, right? Come and conquer, whatever. And you really will be that, right? And one thing that I think is very, very interesting in video games, the video games actually gave you a lot, yet it's never discussed, and I really hate this thing. So I was at a conference 3 years ago. I was at a video game conference about a few years ago, and part of the topic for one of the days was like, what game should children play, right? And it was terrible, okay? And I was very, very critical on these speakers, and I was openly critical, as I always am. I was very critical because these speakers, they were all focused on games being, family friendly. Oh, Mario and Zelda, whatever. But what actually is really important for children to learn, generally speaking here, is investment, right? So you heard probably about the marshmallow test, whatever, right? So it's called delayed gratification. It's an important thing for children to learn, how to invest your time, money, or effort, right? So games, the most important games for a child to play is actually games like Civilization, or even games like Stardew Valley, whatever. But games where you learn how to invest, right? Build a dam, build a bridge, takes a few turns, save your money. Games where you have to save money, investment, and so on, are actually the most keen skills to learn from a young kid, right? It shouldn't be these like Mario games. They're not bad per se, they're entertaining, but no, it should be investment games. You learn how to invest a time in the game, saving the money and so on, right? And again, then, when you play these games, right, you will automatically actually improve on that fact, right? When you're playing these, like, grand strategy games, you will absolutely have to master, right, to play these games, to be good at these games, you have to actually improve that. Same with Europa Universalis, Crusader King, and all these other games as well, right? You have to actually improve, how do I think, how do I do economy, should I tech, should I plan this stuff, right? And when you're playing games like I mentioned, Starcraft, it's less that, the more combat focused, right? But still, though, even in Starcraft, right, you have to make a lot of decision making of, should I go for economy now, or should I fight the other guy, should I play defensive? And those stuff are also like investment for a shorter duration, but still, like, how should I plan this out now, right? Should I go for a big hit right now, or should I bid my time, right? So these are the games that actually will give your brain the most actual improvement, right? Because the more you play those games, the more you will learn how to manage economy and control stuff and so on, right? And that actually is, I would say, the most, again, useful for anyone, especially for children, right? So I always disliked how, like, at least 20 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, game gives you like slightly better finger skills and like communication, but no. And again, back to World of Warcraft, right? I was also very good at using the market, being like a baron, buying stuff, selling stuff, the market, right, controlling that. So no, I think a lot of people will play World of Warcraft. You probably will actually learn stuff like market economy, stuff like that, yeah, dividend pay. No, but basically, right, EVE Online especially, yeah, dividend, yeah, but these are the games that actually will give you more stuff, right, and that skill will give more than just like whatever. So that's also important to point out here. Absolutely, I think, and I think this is also something that I'm glad that seeing this video here, right, Rogan and Elon Musk, middle in the video here. And this is why Trump won, right? No, but seriously, as a side note, I absolutely think that this is all part why Trump won. Not just because he was at Rogan's podcast, but like, even if Tim Walz was playing Cruise Taxi stream, I know he was terrible at it. He was terrible at it. He wasn't even good at it. That was the most embarrassing about it. But even if he was doing that, you could never imagine like Harris or someone, or even him then, even though he plays Cruise Taxi, I still can't imagine him sitting down and just discussing like video games. You know what I mean? This is a part of I think people voted for Trump, right? Because you see Elon Musk be like, oh yeah, video games are great because it improves your like surgeon skills. People are like, yeah, right? Because what I'm saying right now, if you've gone this far into the video, you probably agree with me, right? The video games actually will give you life skills that are useful, right? Except you not just have the right on keyboard, whatever, yeah. But actual skills, right? Or mindset, like that, investment, and right? Economy, stuff like that as well, right? This is what all actual gamers knows, right? We all know this is true, but and we be bothered about this our whole life, right? The people are saying, oh, it's not true, or whatever, yeah. Here comes the richest guy on the planet being like, oh, it's true, all true, right? So people, of course, you want to vote for this guy because you're like, yeah, but this guy gets me, right? So no, but I'm convinced that most people that are actual genuine gamers, and I don't mean tourists, right? I mean actual gamers that like video games on a harder level, like I said earlier, like in a hardcore, like in permanent or whatever, like an actual gamer, not these people that only play casual video games, easy mode, no, but actual games, right? Probably all of them are voting for Trump because Elon Musk, right there, seriously. Like, why would you vote for the other side? Because they're never gonna get you, right? If anything, Tim Walz, because I was interested, I watched him playing his Taxi, and he was terrible at it, like I said, terrible at it. That was the worst part of it. I can't believe he didn't like train before, right? But anyway, I watched his bit, a little bit of it, of his video game discussion, right? And I'm just like, man, this guy is so boring because, well, I guess it's true he actually plays these games. He doesn't understand them, right, from a mental standpoint, right? As a behavior scientist, I am much more interested in Elon Musk here explaining how, I said earlier, how video games are interesting, how video games make you focused, how they make you calm, and whatever. Because Taxi is a great game. I love that game. I played it since it was new, right? On the arcades, and I have it, of course, I have it for Dreamcast, and I have the one of the like the DLC remake version of it. I love this game, but if Tim Walz also was like, oh yeah, I love playing this game because it makes me think better, it meditates me, blah blah, you know. If he says stuff like that, I might be like, you know what, maybe I should vote for this guy, right? But he's just like, oh, game fun, game fun, you know. So it's kind of sad because you have this guy thinking like, oh, maybe now this thing will, you know, finally make a video game more, how to say it, accepted mainstream, right, from men's standpoint. But he's just like, oh, game fun, right? And you see Elon Musk being like, in half a minute, he has made video games better explained than what Tim Walz did in his whole like stream about video games. Yeah, like it's ridiculous. Like he didn't say anything meaningful in the whole stream except he enjoys it, right? And that's the wrong way to think about it. And I think as a side note, right? Not to be, I'm just a hardcore gamer here, and it's the same thing, right? With a movie or a book or whatever. Of course, I think that any kind of entertaining thing you can do, right? Let's say watch a movie then, could give you other stuff as well, right? Not just current entertainment, right? An obvious example with movies or TV in general, you can watch a documentary, right? Like the Cleopatra about my grandma. I'm kidding, but yeah, point. You can watch a documentary about, you know, something, right? And you can learn about the history of this thing, or you can learn about this animal or whatever, right? So obviously you can be entertained and also be educated, right? And the books, of course, are kind of seen like that. And as well, I always find it very weird with video games how you can have these video games, right, that are, some of them, again, Civilization, very historically focused. Me and my friends always joke about that we learn way more history from video games than we ever learn from school, right? That honestly is probably true. Now, my grandpa was a history professor, so I already knew everything anyway, so I learned nothing from school. But seriously, in my case, it is actually true because, like I said, my grandpa, his history professor, he taught me so much about history, right? And the things he didn't teach me, I learned genuinely playing like Civilization, right? Because this is like niche stuff, some wonder or this thing or whatever, right? Then I learned playing those games, right? And in school, I learned nothing new, right? Everything that they told me in school on history, my grandpa had told me years before that, yeah, many years before that. I absolutely learned nothing in school, and this niche stuff I learned from playing video games, like 100% seriously. And of course, I had a perfect A+ in history. Obviously, it was super easy. But my grandpa told me basically the first, like straight up, like even to like high school, yeah, like the first like 9 years, 10 years, whatever, right, of school, of history school and math as well. My grandpa taught me that I was like 5 or 6 or whatever, right? You know, with math, I was like 7, 8 years ahead of math as well, right? You know, when I was 7, I already done like the whole high school math. So, no. Like he was a math professor, so it was like super easy, right? Yeah. That's kind of how the world is, right? You know, like schools are so easy that video games can teach you more stuff like that. No, but it is like that as well, right? And I also put it up because it's also something that we can learn from. Video games. But anyway, to wrap it up though, guys, this video though is mostly about, of course, what do we gain from playing hard games, right? It doesn't have to be hard games, I suppose, but games takes you focus, right? And like I said earlier, I just want to iterate again here. I really agree with Elon Musk that I think it's very true that you will gain a lot of tranquility, right? So earlier in the video, I like what tranquility. And in my own research then, I have researched many stuff in my life. I've written papers, a book or whatever, but one research I interested in as a kid, or young kid, but like young grad student, research, PhD person, you know, like I'm earlier academia, was what makes a winner, right? What makes some people be so good at something? Not just games, it could be any sport or whatever, right? But also that in combination of, okay, what makes someone like be really good at like video games, right? And I mean like professional esport players mostly, and so on. So I actually spent most of my grad school research time then, like the science stuff and whatever, as focusing on like interviewing pro players, interviewing developers that were making like really hard games. For example, I was interviewing Hideki Kamiya back in the days, right? He had made Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, right? A very hardcore, of course, single player games. Very hard to play them on God mode, so on, right? Vanquish, so on, right? If you play them on God mode, stuff like that, right? And I was very interested in these things, so I always been very focused on this part. I mentioned earlier, combat design, right? And on other stuff that I mentioned, not video game stuff, right? I have worked with like designing and developing interfaces for pilots and so on, right? We leave it at that, but basically, right? And it's very similar to one thing we talk about usually when it comes to like simulation stuff is the immersion, right? That the person has to be there, and even if it's a simulation, they have the cockpit, right? We're gonna fly this like commercial jet, right? But we have the cockpit that looks exactly the same as the real, airplane cockpit does, right? And we're gonna play that, and we're gonna really make them, believe they're in the airplane, right? For example, one thing we did there then, I worked with that, is that they were never allowed to fly in the simulation without having the proper uniform on them. And that might sound silly, right? But the point is that, no, if you're gonna get in here, right? If you're gonna fly in this like Boeing, whatever, 7, blah, blah, and we had this simulation for it, right? And blah, blah, so on. You have to actually be in your, like, pilot uniform, right? Get in there, sit there, do this stuff, right? Because it gives you the immersion, right? It gives you the feeling that this is serious, right? And then if we play in a scenario, it's like a blizzard, you have to land, it's like blizzard or whatever, right? And if you wear like normal clothing, like I'm wearing now, like my casual, like anime nerd clothing, right? That might take you out of it. You might remember that, I'm not in danger because I'm sitting here in my Ghislaine shirt, like whatever, right? No, but if I'm in my official, like, uniform, it might make it feel more real, more immersed, right? Stuff like that. So it is very important, and I think especially actually more so in simulation than the video games, right? That you have to be focused, and the goal, of course, simulation is to teach them to be better, right? But from a standpoint of developer standpoint, it is like, no, like one of my goals is that you should forget that you're in simulation, the matrix. It's all real. But seriously, the point is that it's supposed to be the matrix, that you don't even know anymore what's real or not, right? A couple of years ago, I worked on developing testing for I can't say what it does then, but it basically is like how to say it without saying anything there. It's basically like training people how to control infrastructural issues. Okay, so you have people working, right, 24/7 on controlling infrastructure, right? Might sound kind of funny, but you actually have that. Yeah, people that might be working on what happens if it's a flood, right? This thing, or dispatching police or firemen, and what I mean. So stuff like that, right? So I worked on like controlling the kind of infrastructure of the country, blah 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 system, right? And we had a bunch of different scenarios you can train on different, it could be a landslide, or it could be a blizzard dam that destroyed its power lines or whatever, right? And so forth, right? And the same thing there. You have to computer this standpoint, it's very important to make it feel real, So for example, in our system, even though this is of course like a system with the person, the operator, can just play at the office, right? Nothing's happening. We will use both real data, right? Based on previous actual incidents years before, right? So the data, please don't forget, is based on real actual issues, like for example a power line collapsing, and it's a real data happening, right? So the data, copy that, and also we model these things. You could make a phone call, right? So you could call out an AI and be like, oh no, the power line is down here. You could talk to an AI, and the AI, of course, would behave as the power line company. Oh yeah, we can fix that, but it takes 3 hours and so on, right? So we even implemented like an AI that would act like different kind of people you could call or whatever, and call for help and so on. so you can do it by yourself, right? Otherwise, of course, back in the days, right? And this is out there, but back in the days, we would develop that stuff, right? It was kind of like D&D or whatever, you know what I mean? Honestly, when I was younger, before we had the good AIs and so on, we would develop that, right? And then basically someone else at the office would have to be the phone operator, you know what I mean? You would call, say, oh, I need to call someone for help here to trade this thing, right? Then you would call an actual person, then they would pretend to be. So that's how we used to do it, right? When I was in grad school, whatever, that's how it worked back like 20 years ago. You would have like, oh, you can call a real person, right? And they would like pretend to be, oh yes, a blizzard's happening right now, you know what I mean? And they would have to act out, right? Because yeah, you have to train the operators, but you couldn't do it, right? But today you actually can use an AI. Yeah, today you can have an AI, you can be an AI chatbot and so on. So you know, I went I was at a conference. I was at an AI conference like last month, 2 months ago now, early November now, yeah, and there's a lot of discussion about layered AI. Okay, it's not a video, but basically it's like you have an AI and then more AIs. And I think we have to talk about it too later. We have to understand that, like, as people, that you have AIs coming, of course, and it's all about like ChatGPT. I'm talking about layered AI as in you actually have several AIs in one system. So one AI is your buddy you call, right? Another AI is the AI looking at the like training in this case, right? Another AI might be the guy that's throwing the power line, you know, in the simulation. You know what I mean? So you have like 5 different AIs. It's gonna be, the world's gonna be very complicated in the future. It's explaining this stuff to people is very hard. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, yeah, it's explaining stuff is very hard, guys. But anyway, long story short, my point is that we see this thing, right, with a lot of different stuff in reality. I think it's so important to understand what you actually can learn from video games, because it is basically the biggest entertaining stuff right now, right? What I explain now to them, sorry if I mumbled a little bit there, but I'm talking about, you know, training, right? Like, and I like to call it, you know, when I worked in this like infrastructural system, I call it is a video game, right? It is a video game, but the video game is simulating like natural disasters, right? You know what I mean? But it is a video game, kinda. The goal isn't to have fun though. The goal is to, you know, to teach people how to manage different, you know, natural disasters and so on, right, in your city. Okay, fine. But there is a video game. It even scores people. Yeah, it even scores them, because system is like, well, if you can't beat this game, so to speak, right, you cannot get your license to work in the actual place, right? So you have to get like a 90% pass something, whereas you can't even work in it. So it's very, very gamified too. But also something, not a video per se, but gamification, right? Also very big these days, guys. People ask me all the time about that, you know, all the time, you know. So many, how I say, non-gaming stuff today is trying to gamify, right? With gamification, then, like giving the user score and points and so on. It's also one thing, I guess, we can learn from video games, the feedback loops and so on, right? Entertain people in that sense. But there's so much stuff we can actually really learn from video games. But I think it's too being like simulations and so on, right? Because yeah, it is like these are all just very, very complicated video games, right? In a sense, or expensive, maybe a better word for it. But you have to think about it in that sense, though, because people will always like diss video games, right? But a simulation to like fly a Boeing is also just a video game when it comes down to it. It just costs like $1 million to build. Yeah, it's like one cockpit costs like $1 million at least. So it just costs way more. But yeah, technically it's kind of the same thing, though. It's just like a really expensive PS7, you know what I mean? In a lot of ways, right? So of course I agree with you 100% here. And but I think it's too, right? Because I've seen people do the same thing on, for example, then, as I mentioned earlier, when I was researching like professional players, right, in esports, I've seen people do the same thing there too, right? When like they cosplay the characters, they come in there dressed as Ryu or whatever, and some people are like, oh, it looks kind of funny and so on, yeah, whatever. And in some sense, certainly, it's a little bit of like, oh, look at the stream, it's gonna look funny or whatever. But I think it also is about immersion, right? Because when I get serious and I go to tournament, I also usually will wear at least like an anime shirt or game shirt, like, you know, I get in the uniform of a gamer, you know what I mean? When I do my own videos here, when I do reactions, when I stream here, I am never gonna wear like a normal suit, right? People are kind of, oh, whatever, some lives in his mom's basement right now, because this is the mode, you know. If I'm gonna go in here, talk about video games or anime or movies or whatever, I'm gonna dress up, you know, in some kind of anime shirt, right, or a gaming shirt or whatever, because it's kind of the uniform I have now, right? it's part of the immersion, right? Personally, I like to wear clothes, right, based on the character. If I do an anime reaction or anime review, whatever, of that Konosuba, right, I like to wear Aqua, the female main character, Konosuba clothing, right? Because then I feel like, oh yeah, I'm in the mode now, baby, right? I think the same thing there, you know. I mean, it feels way more immersed into it, makes me more focused on it, right? Maybe think only about this stuff, right? So I think it's all very, very accurate what Elon Musk and Rogan is saying. But anyway, guys, hope you liked the video. A little bit scary maybe with the end there, but the thing is that I say this thing here, right? But I've written about this stuff for like the last 20 years, right? Columns, papers, even like a book about this title, right? So I have so much ideas about this stuff. So sometimes for me, I admit it here that I'm a little scatterbrained because I know so much about this topic that this is one of my expertise topic. This particular topic here that I'm mentioning in video game, this is one of the topics I am the most focused on, right? Much more than other people. And so I'm just very much like, I can sit here for like 10 hours, right, to talk about this stuff. So I'm just trying to give you kind of like the surface level of it, and hopefully it's explainable, and hopefully I explain it in some extent, right? So if you like the video, please subscribe, leave a comment below. Do you want more of this or say this stuff? Because I know a lot about behavior science. I specialize in this thing, that, and also then of course behavior economy. And behavior economy is my favorite, I'd say. Behavior economy, and I say it not just to be like a YouTuber, please subscribe and so on, but also because for me, right, it's sometimes hard to know what people actually want to learn, right? And then also, of course, on the other side, I say, what do you want more of X thing, right? But the thing is, like, I know like 20 different psychology subjects, you know what I mean? Which I am an expert in, which I kind of see the 20, but it might say 200 different subjects, right, in this domain, and I'm an expert in like 20 of them, like 10%, you know what I mean? And I'm not even trying to expert on the other 20 or whatever, or 10 or whatever, right? This is 20 I focus on, right? You know what I mean? So for me, it's like I can make a video about X or Y or Z or this, that, right? And you can make 10-hour video about X1, X2, and X3. Yeah, like you could read it down there. And it's very hard for me, honestly. I have no idea what people actually want to learn. X1, X2, X3, X4. Yeah, I just make whatever I feel that I'm interested in, like seeing discussion between these two people inspired me to make this video in like X1 subject, right? It makes sense. But anyway, so you guys can have a great day.